flickering. I don't know. Thank you, Yukiko. Beautiful. And good morning, everyone. Apologies for the strange flickering of our projector here. We'll try and troubleshoot it if that happens again. I want to let you know this morning our music director, Michael, is at home with bronchitis, so we sent him lots of healing wishes, but we've got the music covered, but we miss him. This morning, we lift up the life-changing work of the Church of the Larger Fellowship's prison ministry. The Church of the Larger Fellowship, known as CLF, is a Unitarian Universalist congregation with no geographical boundaries or walls, with thousands of members all around the world. Of those members, more than 1,600 are currently incarcerated. Their prison ministry is called Worthy Now, which I love. It so captures CLF's understanding that all people are worthy of love, respect, and support, not at some future time when we are better people, but as we are right now, wherever we are. Some of these CLF members were already UUs, but the majority learned about Unitarian Universalism's message by being connected to this CLF by others who were incarcerated. The Worthy Now prison ministry also strives to be a community resource for UUs and others in liberal faith traditions, giving us a chance to build a spiritual community that spans both sides of the prison walls. I know for me, for many years, I had an incarcerated pen pal through Black and Pink, and over the years of them writing to me about their spirituality and me writing about not mine, I thought, you know, you might like to be connected with Church of the Larger Fellowship. And they found the resource so nourishing and supportive. So I'm really glad we're lifting up their work today. So today we'll be learning about the prison system in the United States, opening our hearts ever wider to those whose freedom has been taken away, and shining a light on a vision of liberation for all. We thank CLF for sharing some of the resources we'll use to create today's service, and we'll be making a donation to them from the minister's discretionary fund in gratitude. We enter worship with these words from Leslie Takahashi. All that we have ever loved and all that we have ever been stands with us on the brink of all that we aspire to create. A deeper peace, a larger love, a more embracing hope, a greater generosity of spirit, and a deeper joy in this life we share. Welcome to worship. Our first hymn this morning is another one that won't be in your hymnals. I'm going to teach it to you. This one is near and dear to my heart. When I was a chaplain at Wellesley College, our UU worship circle would sing this to each other at the end of worship. It's called Courage, My Friend, or alternately known as Singing the Spirit Home. It was written by Eric Bogle, who's a Scottish songwriter. He wrote it about a man in South Africa who was sentenced to death. Eric was inspired by the music of the anti-apartheid struggle, and this final section of the song was designed to be sung in a mashup with Shosholoza, one of the most famous anti-apartheid anthems. It's a song that's call and response, and then we sing a line together. Call and response, we sing it together. You'll catch on, but I'm going to sing it, and we'll practice it here, and then we'll rise. Deanna, would you mind switching us over to the lyrics? These lyrics are slightly tweaked from the original. It goes like this, and then you'll sing it back to me. Actually, Yukiko, could I have a C? Thank you. Courage, courage, my friends, my and then we'll do this line together. It goes, you do not walk alone, or go alone. Let's try that. You do not go alone. Perfect. Then call and response. We will go with you. Go with you together and sing your journey home. That's it. You got the whole song. So I invite you to rise in body or in spirit, add some harmonies, add some percussion, some body percussion, and just sing out a little bit. Courage, courage, my friends, you do not go alone. Beautiful. We will go with you, and sing your journey home. Keep it going. Courage, courage, my friends, you do not go alone. We will go with you, go and sing your journey home. One more time, add some harmonies. Courage, courage, my friends, you do not go alone. We will go with you, and sing your journey home. Beautiful. You may have a seat, and thank you, Rose and Deanna, for troubleshooting whatever is going on with our projector this morning. Each week, we light our flaming chalice with words of covenant, words of shared commitment. I welcome up Tom Keidel to lead us in our English words, which we'll say together, and then I'll say our Spanish words, which are in translation of the English, in honor of our sister community in Plazuelas, El Salvador. The chalice lighting words will be up on your screen in a moment. Oh, and I believe we have somebody young coming to help us light this. Anybody? Any of you want to come help?
There we go.
Perfect. Thank you. Can we have the slide up when you have a moment? Thank you.
Love is the spirit of this church,
and service is its prayer. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. El amor es el espíritu de esta iglesia, y el servicio es nuestra oración. Esta es nuestra gran promesa, vivir juntos en paz, buscar la verdad con amor y ayudarnos los unos a los otros. Thank you, Tom, and thank you to our helper. I believe Rose has a story this morning for us about universalism, half of our name. Tell us more, Rose.
Good morning. So this morning, we're talking a lot about the belief that all people are worthy of love, no matter who they are, what they've done. There's a really specific history to why believing in inherent worth and dignity is so important to us as Unitarian Universalists. One of the faith traditions of our religious heritage is Universalism. The Universalists believed that God is loving and kind, and that all people, regardless of their actions in life, would go to heaven and experience God's full love and kindness when they die. When a lot of Universalist churches were founded in this country, this challenged in big ways the dominant beliefs of their time. At the time, most Christians in this country believed that God punished people after they died, even if they tried to be good in life. This is a difference that still really matters to us, even though now Unitarian Universalists don't all consider ourselves Christian, and we often have different understandings of what happens after we die. But our Universalist heritage still matters because it's part of what led the way to our current belief that all people have inherent worth and dignity, and that even people we don't agree with or who we think have done bad things are worthy of love. So I have a short story for you all about an important leader in Universalism named Hosea Ballou. He was born over 250 years ago, way back in 1711. His father was a Christian preacher, but not the Universalist kind. So Hosea was brought up to believe that only some people, only 1 in 1,000 people, go to heaven after they die. As a child, Hosea was always asking questions, wondering why things were the way that they were. Eventually, this led him to become a Universalist. And this story is one version of how that might have come to be. It's called Muddy Children. I think, oh, it's already up there. Here is a photo, or not a photo, a painting of Hosea Ballou as an adult. This story takes place when he was a child. Over 250 years ago, in a small house in a small town on the edge of a forest in the state of New Hampshire, there lived a small boy. His name was Hosea Ballou. Hosea, just like other children, liked to learn and do new things. He was always asking questions about what and why and how. Just like other children, Hosea liked to play. In the winter, he jumped in snowdrifts. In the summer, he jumped in the creek. In the fall, he jumped in leaf piles. And in the spring, Hosea's favorite season, it would rain and rain and rain, and then Hosea would jump in the mud. Hosea loved mud. He liked when it was soft and squishy. He liked when it was thick and sticky. He liked to jump in puddles, hard with both feet to make muddy water splash really high. Hosea loved mud. Now you can imagine not everyone in his family liked mud quite as much as Hosea did. Hosea's older sisters were the ones who took care of him and cleaned up all of his messy clothes, and they got tired of doing so much work. One day, Hosea's sisters asked their father to tell Hosea to stop playing in the mud. When his father told him to stop, Hosea asked why, and his father told him that staying clean was one of God's rules for all of us. So Hosea tried to follow that rule and not get so muddy, but it wasn't easy. He stopped stomping in mud puddles on purpose, but sometimes the mud was just there. Sometimes he had to walk through the mud to get across the yard to gather eggs from the chickens on their farm. Sometimes he just couldn't help himself but jump in a big muddy pile for fun. One day, his sisters were again getting tired of cleaning, so they asked their father to talk with him. Hosea, his father said sternly, "You must not play in the mud." "Yes, father," said Hosea. He was sad because he had truly tried not to get muddy, most of the time anyway. "Are you very angry at me, father?" "I'm disappointed in you, Hosea, and I'm a little angry with you." Hosea hung his head and kicked the dirt with his toes. He dared to look up, just a little, and asked, "Do you still love me?" "Hosea," said his father, "I will always love you, no matter what you do." "Even if I get muddy again?" "Yes." "Even if I get really, really muddy?" "Even then." "But remember, Hosea, you must try to stay clean." "I'll remember and I'll try," Hosea promised, and he did. As he grew up, he stopped liking mud quite so much, but he still liked to ask questions about what and how and why. Father, Hosea asked when he was a teenager, how can it be that our church believes that God will let only 1 in 1,000 people into heaven, even if many of those 1,000 people led good lives? His father didn't have an answer to that question. Hosea had to find his own answers. So he read the Bible, a book with many stories about religious people and about God. He went to some Universalist churches and asked more questions there. At the age of 19, Hosea decided that he believed in universal salvation and the idea that everyone everywhere, everyone in the universe, would be given salvation. Hosea believed that God loved everyone, no matter their actions in life. How can you believe that? Asked his father. How can you believe that God would let bad people into heaven? Because, Father, said Hosea, I remember what you told me when I was small. I believe that even if God is disappointed with people or a little angry with them, that God will always love them and want them to be happy, no matter what they do, no matter how muddy they are. Thank you all. Now I'm going to invite the kids here today to go on off and join me in Children's Chapel. Do you think, Reverend Joe, could you lead us in our children's benediction this time?
I would love to.
Wonderful.
Have a wonderful time. For you shall go out in joy, for you shall go out in joy, and come back in peace, and come back in peace. Blessed be. I love hearing them. Makes me so happy. So we are in the last Sunday of our stewardship season, Give Together, Grow Together. So I'm going to invite up Gretchen, I believe is the person who's giving us an update, Gretchen Dietz, to tell us where we're at in our stewardship campaign. And then we're going to hear from Mary Boyle, who will give us a testimony. And Mary, I'll spotlight you when it's your turn in just a moment. And Deanna, when you're ready, there's a slide that has our update on it. There it is.
Good morning. So our slide shows that we're very close to our dollar goal of $245,000, which is a pretty steep climb. So we've done really well. Our members and friends have already pledged $9,300 more than last year. This is really remarkable. However, as you can see, our giving tree needs a few more leaves, 21 to be exact, to reach our important participation goal of 84. And that number is equal to the number of pledges we received this current year. That's where we pulled that number, the current year that ends this coming June 30th. As most of you know by now, our congregation is nearing the end of a 2-year search for our next settled minister. So I checked with Allison Baer, who is the chair of the Minister Search Committee, to see if she had a message on this last Sunday of the pledge drive. So what she would like me to convey is that the MSC is asked by minister candidates about our stewardship drives and our results in the past 2 years, and so far this year. And that has been of significant interest to the candidates who they are meeting with. Many congregations have had trouble with their pledge drives during the pandemic, which is understandable. But we stand out as a congregation because we have continued to come together and support our church and one another with increased membership and increased dollar support. For the past 2 pledge drives, we have grown not only in total dollars, but in the number of pledge units. Last year, we increased by 6%, which means more members and friends have made a commitment to TPC financially, even as we were separated by COVID. To continue standing out among other searching congregations, we need to continue growing our participation as we have grown our membership. So here's our communal task for the next few days. 21 additional pledges to join the 63 we already have, and each pledge is a leaf on the giving tree. If you can see, we have exactly 63 leaves up there. You can count them yourself. Given that we have only about less than $10,000 to raise, that means that with an average pledge of $407, which is just $34 a month starting in July, we can reach both our dollar goals and our participation goals. When we give together, we grow together. And now I'd like to welcome Mary Boyle, who is joining us on Zoom.
Here she is.
Good morning.
Morning.
My name is Mary Boyle. I decided to come to Theodore Parker Church near the end of 2019, just a few months before the pandemic. I grew up in and was educated by the Catholic Church, and my close family members are all faithful Catholics. There is much that I value from that tradition. I love my Irish Catholic tradition. If we are lucky in our lives, we benefit from important, exciting experiences that help us grow by educating us or exposing us to new ways of thinking about and understanding the world. For me, there are 3 such impactful experiences that I would like to describe. The first one is when I was a volunteer 4th grade teacher in New Mexico in a Catholic school, a small town, in the mid-60s. My students were descendants of the Spanish conquerors and the children of the Native American pueblos that were in the region. It was an amazing experience. I was immersed in cultures that were new to me. I was the person with the accent. I was the person who learned that Columbus Day was not a school holiday. There were other traditions than the ones that I was used to. I learned to see beyond the world that I was used to back in Boston. The next experience that challenged me to learn and expand my understanding of myself happened later in my teaching career. I had left grade school teaching and was teaching at a family development program in South Boston. The program was founded by Catholic Sisters of Notre Dame. It is a program for mothers who are struggling with poverty, health issues, and often violence. These moms had left school before graduating, often to have their first baby. The program runs a child care and preschool for the children of the women. I taught GED subjects to the moms. What they taught me in the program and what the other staff people taught me about life is immeasurable. So eventually I retired, and it's 2015, and National Grid and Spectra Energy were planning to build a high pressure natural gas infrastructure right in my West Roxbury neighborhood. An injustice that would make the surrounding area a sacrifice zone if there was ever an accident. There were vigils, protests, standouts, petitions, letters to the editor, marches, visits to officials, court cases, and then there was nonviolent civil disobedience with arrests. On the first day of civil disobedience, there were 3 people who stood in the way of the machinery on Washington Street. One was Reverend Ann Bancroft, minister of the Theodore Parker Church. The thing about deciding to do civil disobedience is that it's a good idea to have some training first. The UU congregation here at Theodore Parker offered this space for those weekly trainings. And soon there were members of the congregation who took part in the trainings, and some were arrested. Members of the church frequently stood to witness at the daily vigils at the worksite, and Reverend Ann became a member and advisor to the steering committee of SWIRL, or Stop the West Roxbury Lateral Committee. So this is where the third transformative experience happened for me. Over the years, I had stopped attending church. There were too many differences in what I believed about the dignity and rights of all people and what was officially taught. Unitarian Universalism was not totally new to me. There are well-known names of UU people that have worked for civil rights, women's rights, marriage equality. But because I had gotten to know Reverend Ann and also several members of the congregation, because I had been in the building so many times throughout the pipeline fight, because I could see that this is a community that strives to live and act on its ideals of justice and inclusivity, I felt I could do it. I decided to attend the Unitarian Universalist Church, Theodore Parker Church. It was an emotional leap for me, but I am glad I have done it. I find inspiration every time, and also in the words of the Great Covenant. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its prayer. I am amazed at all the ways church members are active in justice issues. There is beautiful music. Yukiko introducing us to Philip Glass, for example. There is such caring for the community. A good example of that is that when the pandemic hit, this congregation figured out how to hold services by Zoom. It's so much more interactive than a simple TV camera. Thanks be to all who make that work. So this is why I pledge. If you have not already done so, please pledge generously to this year's pledge drive. This is a special community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Ready to bring back the refrain of "We Stand with Mary" from the protests. In that spirit, our centering hymn is also a protest song, or at least has its roots there. We'll be singing the round "Building Bridges," which, if you want to follow in your hymnal, is number 1023. It came to us from the Greenham Common Women's Peace Camp, a 1982 protest that was set up outside an RAF base to protest against U.S. nuclear weapons on British common land. So I invite you to rise in body, rise in spirit, and raise your voices as we sing together. You're welcome to add, it is a round. If you would like to add your own round parts, feel free. Building bridges between our divisions, I reach out to you. Will you reach out to me? With all of our voices and all of our visions, friends, we could make such sweet harmony. Building bridges between our divisions, I reach out to you. Will you reach out to me? With all of our voices and all of our visions, friends, we could make such sweet harmony. Building bridges between our divisions, I reach out to you. Will you reach out to me? With all of our voices and all of our visions, friends, we could make such sweet harmony. One more time. Building bridges between our divisions, I reach out to you. Will you reach out to me? With all of our voices and all of our visions, friends, we could make such sweet harmony. Friends, we could make such sweet harmony. Beautiful. You may have a seat. I invite you to join me in a time of meditation or prayer. First in words, then in a time of shared silence, which will close with the sounding of a chime. These words of prayer are, again, words from Reverend Leslie Takahashi. Spirit of life, God of love, hear this cry, which begins with gratitude for the human ability to take action to right the wrongs of our kin. If you are the force of love, be loving to these dear ones who would rid the world of hatred and greed. If you are the force of possibility, seed opportunity for those who believe they are forgotten. If you are a larger freedom, break the chains of oppression and ignorance in which so many lives are bound. If you are the power of healing, please, oh please, bring comfort to the little ones who are imprisoned away from their sources of comfort and care. Whatever you are, any force of the more, which allows us to reach beyond this reality to a more inclusive and loving presence, give energy to these precious ones who would make a difference. And may their actions inspire all of us to do whatever is in our power to do, to make it known that we will not allow our neighbors to be treated as less than human. We share now in a time of quiet, closed by the sound of a chime. So may it be.
Generosity is a spiritual practice in our Unitarian Universalist congregations. We give to remind ourselves of how many gifts we have to offer. We give to remember that we are part of something bigger than ourselves. We give because we believe in music and sacred space. We give with gratitude for all that we have been given, and with the faith that together we have more than enough. Links to donate will be in the chat, or you can take a meditative moment, writing out a check and sending it to the church after the service. Ushers will be coming around the sanctuary to collect an offering from those in the pews who wish to donate something more tangible. As we listen to Wind Summoner by the CLF member Storm Craver, an offering to sustain this congregation of memory and hope will be gratefully received. Thank you.
And Deanna, would you mind playing our offertory video? Thank you. It's the next slide over has our music. Can you move to the next slide and hit play, please? Thank you. Perfect.
Our reading today is an excerpt from Just Mercy by attorney
Prison
Brian
ministry
Stevenson.
is essential to
Okay? Our reading today is an excerpt from Just Mercy by attorney Brian Stevenson. Proximity to America's prison system has taught me some basic and humbling truths, including this vital lesson. Each of us is more than the worst thing we have done. My work with the poor and the incarcerated has persuaded me that the opposite of poverty is not wealth. The opposite of poverty is justice. Finally, I've come to believe that the true measure of our commitment to justice, the character of our society, our commitment to the rule of law, fairness, and equality cannot be measured by how we treat the rich, the powerful, and the privileged, and the respected among us. The true measure of our character is how we treat the poor, the disfavored, the accused, the incarcerated, and the condemned.
Thank you, Nancy. I'm just going to give us a sentence or two of introduction because I'm not giving the sermon today. It's created by members of the staff of the Church of the Larger Fellowship's Prison Ministry Program. It's really a wonderful way to hear directly from them about the work that they do. Their video has pretty fantastic captions already baked in it. So those of you at home, if you're watching and you have captions enabled, you might want to go to click on captions and click hide captions or hide subtitles just so that you're not seeing duplicates. I invite you to open your hearts and receive these messages from the Church of the Larger Fellowship.
prison ministry is essential to CLF's commitment to liberation as we serve thousands across the country. Today, we will hear from the people who are doing the work to support our incarcerated members. The state of the carceral system is dire, and there are many things each of us can do right now from the outside. There are a few questions that we hear all the time, and you will get to learn from these leaders about the difference between abolition and prison reform, what life can be like without prisons, and tangible actions that you can take right now in your community. Also, it matters so much that we all know and understand what is at stake right now in this moment. Our youth faith centers love. Not just love of people who look like us, have the same resources, and are free. We share a love that is not conditional. A person's worth does not cease to be because they are no longer free. We know that generations of trauma and pain color our experiences, and systems are created to inflict more trauma and more pain. Healing can't begin until these systems are dismantled. Today, I am joined by Christina Rivera, lead ministry team member, Sarah LeBert Jr., the ministry manager, and Beth Murray, prison ministry administrator. One of the most crucial understandings in this work is why all of this really matters, why this ministry matters to them, and why it should matter to others. So let's hear what they have to say.
Prison ministry matters to me because I think it is an embodiment of some of the most challenging ministry we do as Unitarian Universalists. And when I say ministry, I mean the ministry that we all do as Unitarian Universalists. It challenges us to look past what we have as preconceived notions and expectations of people, and challenges us to validate their worthiness now, the way they are at this moment, where they are at this moment. Sometimes in prison ministry, we learn that is one of the hardest things that we can do, right? Is to look past what we expect and what we bring and really look at the other individual. No one in the carceral system is there because they want to be. No one is there because they think that this is a great choice that they may or may not have made in their life. We know the carceral system is there for one thing and one thing only. It's a profit-making institution that is there to continue the slave trade practices that our country was founded upon, the genocide and enslavement of peoples that our country was founded upon. So it really requires us to look deep in ourselves, not just to minister to someone who we think is less fortunate than ourselves, but to really look at ourselves and seek out those areas that we are less fortunate, that we are diminished because this individual has been caught up in this net.
Hello, my name is Beth Murray, and I work for the Worthy Now Prison Ministry, a program of the Church of the Larger Fellowship. The Worthy Now Prison Ministry brings support to a marginalized community. You are worthy. These are words that I write in every letter I send. Our ministry allows us free world people, to live into our UU values, the inherent worth and dignity of every person. This is a time when we're not just saying and agreeing to our UU principles, but we are acting on those principles. This is not a time to pass judgment on a person's crime. Our hope, our expectation, is to offer an environment of love and care. When someone wrote to say that they're in solitary confinement because it's the only safe place to be as a trans person, I want that member to know that they are safe in our community of Unitarian Universalism. When someone wrote to say that they rarely get outside and that they miss seeing nature, the CLF sent an image of a waterfall. These simple gestures are putting our principles into motion.
I think from a Unitarian Universalist perspective, prison ministry strikes at the heart of what it means to lift up the worth and dignity of every person. As a Pan-African socialist, I understand that the legacy and mechanism of slavery lives on in the prison industrial complex. And I think ultimately the issue of coercion versus freedom is fundamental for all of us, because as long as there is a carceral system, as long as the jail is used as a way to warehouse people who are caught in the outcomes of governmental neglect, as long as prison is seen as a solution for all kinds of social, economic, political, behavioral, and interpersonal problems, or those things that are deemed problems by the state, then we are all at risk of being criminalized, captured, and confined against our will.
There is so much good information from that question. Prison ministry is so much more than the letters we send and receive. We, along with all of our volunteers, are a lifeline for people that our carceral system hopes we will forget. We won't forget them. Next up, let's hear about the difference between prison reform and prison ministry.
Prison reform. Prison reform is an opportunity to minimize the chances that someone will re-offend. It's an attempt to improve prison facilities, improve the space, a cleaner space, a healthier space, a space with legal resources, educational opportunities. How about emotional support? Unfortunately, that just does not happen. Prisons create an environment of punishment, aggression, inequality, and they are prime examples of inhumanity. When our prison system is so broken, we need to take a look at prison abolition. Instead of spending money on a dysfunctional system, let's instead invest in the mental and physical health and the well-being of our children, our families, our schools, our communities. Prison abolition is an opportunity to look at racial inequalities and dismantle those systems that foster racism, punishment, violence, and control.
What's the difference between prison reform and prison abolition? I think reform seeks to preserve the mechanisms and core of the state, in this case, the carceral system, while making often superficial and concessions, changes, and compromises. At a fundamental level, abolition seeks to grasp at the roots of the carceral system by envisioning and fighting for more equitable ways of societal interaction, dealing with harm in our communities and how we view justice. And in doing so, undoing the carceral system. In interaction with the system of prisons, abolition seeks to challenge its tenets, mitigate its harm, and disrupt its operations, ultimately dismantling it.
The difference between prison reform and prison abolition is a great question. Prison reform is something that we need now. Prison abolition is something that we needed 100 years ago. Prison reform will help as harm reduction. It means that folks who are in prisons right now we can advocate for their humanity, we can advocate for their humane treatment. The difference between prison reform and prison abolition is prison abolition, we are advocating for all of our humanity, for all of our humane treatment. Prison abolition means that we think of a different way to resource our communities, our individuals, and our lives within each other's safety. We think of what would it mean to hold that safety, that care, that community together. What would it mean to really look after one another in deep and profound ways? Would it take more effort? Absolutely. But it would also return to us part of our souls, part of our spirit, part of our being that is missing right now, that is diminished by every soul, by every person that we keep caged in this country.
I hope these answers helped you to have a better understanding of what we need right now, what we all need to be safe, to live into our values fully, and show up for people who no longer have the ability to show up for themselves. Our ancestor, Fannie Lou Hamer, told us, nobody's free until everybody's free. And that has never been more true than it is right now. So, how do we as a community turn thoughts and prayers, heartbreak and sadness into action, into living, breathing love? Let's hear from the team on how we can help incarcerated community members right now.
How can I help incarcerated community members right now? So I think first we have to ground ourselves in an understanding of what abolition means and is. So reading Miriam Caba's We Do This Till We Free Us is a good start. Going to criticalresistance.org and finding a chapter or signing up for one of their workshops. Because the best thing that we can do to help someone who's incarcerated is to act with their best interests in mind. So whether that's becoming a pen pal with the Worthy Now prison program, prison ministry, whether that's volunteering legal help, or whether that's organizing with a political initiative, when you understand abolition, you can act in a way that is fundamentally helpful to those who are incarcerated.
How can we help incarcerated community members right now? One of the ways that we can help incarcerated community members right now is by acknowledging that they exist, that they are worthy now, and that it is our collective responsibility to make sure that they are not forgotten, that they are not unknown, that they understand that we are trying to do everything within our power to abolish the carceral system within the United States. That they understand that we know, and I say this, often this is said, you know, that we are not the worst thing that we have ever done. And that makes us think that folks who are incarcerated somehow had a worse thing that they'd ever done. We all do. We all have a worse thing that we have ever done. And that does not mean that we need to be incarcerated for it. In fact, many of the folks that are incarcerated are there not for things that they have done, right? We know this to be true. And so we take a step back, we take a move back, we take a roll back and say, what does it mean to let these folks know, to let our brothers and sisters and siblings in life know that we see them and we know them? That could be part of the Pen Pal program. It could be donating to our Worthy Now prison ministry program. It could be working within our state action networks. It could be working on the local prison review boards. There are so many ways that folks can get involved. But at the core of that, we have to recognize the humanity of those who are currently being held in cages. That core of humanity is what we will connect to person by person, church by church, community by community, in order to stitch together the network that will finally bring abolition to our carceral state.
The Church of the Larger Fellowship now provides resources to over 1,600 people experiencing incarceration. And we need the help of people, of volunteers, to help us sustain this growing community. So, for example, we have 100 people, incarcerated members, who are eligible for a free world pen pal. But we don't have enough free world UU writers to connect them to. As a UU community, we can become a pen pal to a CLF member currently experiencing incarceration. Think about it. You might be writing a person who was disowned by their family. You might be writing to someone who feels God will not accept them as a genderqueer person. We can send a letter filled with compassion instead of anger. We can be a listening ear. A listening ear, especially when someone is experiencing so much injustice at a prison facility. And we can just be a beacon of hope, one letter at a time. You can help.
There are so many options, y'all, and all of us can do something. I heard that there are books to read, pen pals are needed, donations are always needed. I mean, postage is just getting more and more expensive. We have a state action network that could use your help. And legal help is always useful and always needed. There are even more opportunities with local organizations, bail funds, the list go on and on. We are called to do this justice work. And here's the thing. It's easy to feel overwhelmed by all the things to do, what's needed to dismantle these broken systems. We can let our inaction turn into shame, and before we know it, we are pretending like none of this exists. The people no longer exist. The harm being inflicted on these people no longer exists. People will continue to suffer in inhumane conditions until we let go of our own feelings of helplessness and step into the power we have here in the free world. And we have a lot. We can make change right now. One day, we can have what we dream of, a world with no prisons. Can you imagine it? For just a moment, just think about it. What do you think that would be like? How do you think it would feel to have the mental health support that you need? To have whatever mistake that you made not be a death sentence? Let's hear from Sir on what he thinks about this idea of no more prisons.
What happens if there are no more prisons? I think one thing is that we were raised with the assumption that prisons are doing something constructive now, when in fact, all the research points to prisons being ineffective at deterring crime and ineffective at rehabilitating those who are criminalized. And yet the cost of prison is extreme, both in dollar amount and in lives and communities affected. So I think that if there are no more prisons, then there will be more constructive and equitable ways to treat one another, and less ways for us to oppress those who the state has deemed oppressible.
Thank you, sir. And a big thank you to all of our prison ministry team members for sharing the realities of a system that doesn't have us in it by chance. It matters that each and every individual we serve feels our love and knows that we are out here liberating us all by telling the truth.
With those messages in our ears as we come toward the close of our service, and thank you for hanging in there today with this very full service, I invite us to think about how we want to turn thoughts and prayers and fears and heartache into action. One way can be to learn more from the Worthy Now Prison Ministry Network. If you'd like, there's a sign-up sheet over by the bust of Teddy over here. You can put your name and email address, and Rose, whose other job is actually working at the Church of the Larger Fellowship, will send you some more information about how to donate, how to volunteer, how to be a pen pal, any of those things. Those of you online, I just put a link in the chat as well. For each of us, I invite us to ponder these difficult truths about incarceration alongside a vision for what liberation can look like. So with that, we close our hymn with a hymn. Bleh. We're going to sing Building a New Way. It's number 1017 by Martha Sandeffer. If you're looking in the hymnals, we'll be singing verses 1, 2, 3, and then back to 1. You can also just sing along with the slides. I invite you to rise in body, in spirit, or in voice as we sing together, Building a New Way. We are building a new way. We are building a new way. We are building a new way, feeling stronger every day. We are building a new way. We are working to be free. We are working to be free. We are working to be free of hate and greed and jealousy. We are working to be free. We can feed our every need. We can feed our every need. We can feed our every need. Start with love, that is the seed. We can feed our every need. We are building. We are building a new way. We are building a new way. We are building a new way, feeling stronger every day. We are building a new way. Beautiful. You may have a seat as we share a few very brief announcements and invitations, ways to stay connected to this community. First of all, immediately following our postlude, which is some more Debussy, we'll have our coffee hour over in the parish hall, along with a breakout room for those online who would like to connect. And then at about noon, maybe a few minutes after, folks can gather in the parlor for a conversation about what our social justice ministries at the church are up to and what we might be up to next. It's open to all, whether you've been deeply involved or know nothing at all about what we're up to for our social justice ministries. This Friday night, we'll be having a game night hosted by our RE program and open to folks of all ages. Deanna, I think there might be a slide with the announcements if you're able to throw that up here. Thank you so much. Again, also save the date for our Theodore Parker lecture with Rasan Hall, which is coming up. You'll see a registration link for both online participation and in person coming out soon. And it's also time to RSVP for our UU Advocacy Day if you want to help promote legislation that will help move our Commonwealth in a direction you'd like it to go. Finally, I close with words from Reverend Bill Sinkford to send us on our way. Spirit of life and love, dear God of all nations, there is so much work to do. We have only begun to imagine justice and mercy. Help us hold fast to our vision of what can be. May we see the hope in our history and find the courage and the voice to work for that constant rebirth of freedom and justice. That is our dream. Amen.